Hello, everyone. Welcome to Small Biz Tips. So, guys, I was on Facebook a few weeks ago, and I saw this post from a good friend of mine named Sebastian, who was also on the podcast. And then I saw this gentleman, Branden. I was like, wait a second, who is this guy? I start looking through his posts. I'm like, wow, I love what he does. And I'm like, I gotta have him to come in. So I reached out, and he was so grateful to say, hey, I'll come in, I'll share the knowledge. So, Branden, what's up, man?
Hey, thank you so much for having me on. Just happy to be here and I'm glad that you reached out so I can kind of, bring some value to your community and your listeners and just happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you. So, before we get into all that you know when it comes to acquisition and ecom, right? Who is Branden?
Well, yeah, Branden Yamada. I use my Japanese name over here in Japan.
Uh-huh.
I'm Brandon Carroll in the States, but Yamada is just kind of a unique name to remember, so I just go by that. But
I like
basically
it.
just I'm not I'm just an everyday guy.
Mm,
E-commerce, buying and selling e-commerce businesses is just what I eat, sleep, and breathe for the most part.
mm,
Been in the industry for 5 years now. And I love the e-commerce industry as a whole, and acquisitions is just kind of a next level of it. And it's
mhm.
something that just made a lot of sense. So, I do that. I still have I still got my hobbies. I like picking up heavy things and putting them down occasionally.
So
I
you
like
talking weightlifting or something
yeah,
else?
a little bit. I don't get as much time as I'd like, but I'm getting
Uh-huh.
back into it, so it's been good.
Nice.
Got a great girlfriend, and she's been great to me. I got a great mom.
I love it.
Take care of her, great family. So just super blessed and happy and just doing my best to try to improve, a little bit every day. So
That's fantastic, man. So let's go back. You said you got into ecom 5 years ago.
yeah.
How'd you get into that? Like, what happened that makes you, you know what, I want to get into e-commerce?
Yeah, that's a good question. And everyone's got their different reasons on why they want to get into business or do anything, with their
Uh-huh.
own business or whatnot. And I was kind of in that same spot. I was looking at, how do I transition from being like a regular employee,
Hmm.
getting out of the 9 to 5 and getting into something where I can make money on my own terms and achieve the lifestyle and the goals that I have, for myself, right? So,
Yeah.
I started out kind of like everyone else. You're looking at, well, what are the different ways of making money online? And there's just so much content out there, good, bad, and in between. And I
Yeah.
went through a lot of different hiccups. I tried affiliate marketing, I had a supplement blog, I tried a lot of different things. And e-commerce is just something that made sense because it's growing.
Yeah.
It's gonna continue to grow. um and it's a great industry. It makes sense, and so it's something I can get behind. But unlike just getting into drop shipping or some of the other facets of e-commerce, it just made
Mhm.
more sense to me to be in the business of buying and selling the
Mm.
businesses itself. And so I looked more into that and learned the hard way, the very hard way. There's not really any mentors or guides on how to do all that stuff. So
Mm.
learn slowly but surely. And I still learn today, but we're in a different spot now. So happy for the progress and the lessons I've had along the way.
That's amazing. So I want to, you mentioned something. You said you learned the hard way. Did you
Yeah.
purchase an e-commerce store? Did you start one? What happened? What was that lesson that you learned? Are you able to share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of different lessons that are out there. And, just as business owners in general, like a lot of us have run into these lessons that, we might not ever share with other people,
Yeah.
but nonetheless, there are lessons to be had, right? And, I started out on the sell side of e-commerce,
Mhm.
businesses. So there's a buy side and a sell side. A sell side, you're working with, selling e-commerce businesses. A buy side, you're working on buying e-commerce businesses. So I started on the sell side and just working together with people and teaming up with them to look at how they can make an exitable business and actually helping them with that process, getting it marketed. And so I helped a couple of owners get their businesses sold, and
Mm.
that came with a lot of harsh lessons because there's no one who teaches you, well, what makes a valuable e-commerce business. There's some blog posts, but when you talk to
Mhm.
real buyers, real investors who have real money, and you run into those hard questions, and if you're not prepared, you could lose that potential buyer. So, there was a lot of little lessons, I'd say, but the main things being knowing what makes a valuable e-commerce business, what people want to buy, and how to do that. So,
Well,
those are the
let's
main
talk
ones
about that.
yeah.
I'm curious, right? Because you get those done for you type of e-com business all
Mhm.
over the internet, right?
Mhm.
Some are good, some are not.
Mhm.
and you get all type of stories from that. And then you have people that are buying 8-figure businesses. So
Right.
tell us more about, what are like some of the key components when, let's say I'm a buyer,
Mhm.
and because our audience is mostly entrepreneurs, marketers, business owners, and so forth. And they're like, you know what, I want to buy an e-commerce business, but I'm hearing all these things about the margin, or what should they be looking out for? What's important for them to know if they want to buy a real e-commerce business?
Mhm. Yeah, so that's a really good question. And I forgot to mention this, but one of the things I'm involved in, I'm an advisor for Walker Diebel's group. It's an acquisition group called the Acquisition Lab. And
Okay.
pretty much all we do is we help regular everyday people buy, established businesses, whether they're
Mm.
7, 8 figure businesses. And, we've got dozens, hundreds of people in that. And so this is a topic that comes up a lot of times, is
Yeah.
because, not everyone's an e-commerce expert, but, there's a lot more entrepreneurs out there, and maybe they're
Yeah.
looking at buying a business, and maybe they look at the e-commerce side. And so it's like, well, what do I look for, and how do I avoid these pitfalls that other people fall into? So
Hmm.
one of the big pitfalls, and for the listeners, there's a couple main pitfalls I want you to avoid. And one of them is getting into these drop shipping or done for you automated e-commerce businesses. They sound
Mm.
super attractive, and I see the most people getting burned on them. It's the most commonly failed acquisition I've seen in the 5 years I've been doing this. And the reason for that is
Yeah.
a lot of these simple done for you stores and drop shipping stores, they focus on selling the dream or the goal of having a passive automated e-commerce business. You could tap
Yeah.
into it, have these, profits that just flow into your bank account or whatnot. And it sounds so attractive, and it's usually at that price point of under $100,000. Will be anywhere
Hmm.
from 20 to 100,000. So it's at a really attractive point for people to jump into. And the thing is, these drop shipping and done for you stores, they don't have that level of branding. They don't have the
Mm.
tenure, the proof of concept knocked out enough to where your price is going to you're not going to justify what you paid for it, and it's not going to sustain the test of time over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And that's just by the numbers, right? There are some
Yeah.
exceptions out there, but that's the number one big one that I see people running into. And I think another big thing for people to look out for is, instead of just going out there in the market and looking at different businesses to buy, you need to take some time and take inventory of your skills,
Mm.
experience, your interests, what you're not interested in, and
Yeah.
just getting familiar with the different types of online businesses or e-commerce businesses out there. Just looking up, Googling what is an Amazon FBA business,
Yeah.
and then reading the first summary on that and going through and just making yourself aware. And that'll save you so much time in finding the right businesses and not wasting time on things that might not match your interests or your skill set or experience.
No, I love that advice, because we got to do our research, right? Sometimes we see something and it's a shiny object, like, oh my God,
Mhm.
I got 30 grand. I'm gonna put it in here. I'm gonna make 100 grand in 3 months. You
Yeah.
get super excited, and then you buy into it, and then you don't get what promised, and you're like, oh my God, all this online stuff is a scam, and you
Mhm.
missed out on an opportunity to get something good. So
Yep.
I'm curious, when it comes to, for example, you said, doing some research on Amazon FBA. Right. What are
Mhm.
those type of businesses, e-com businesses, that you see that are selling the most? Is it
Yeah.
Amazon FBA? Is it branded Shopify store? Like, what
Mhm.
does that look like?
Yeah, so it's funny, the if you look at the recent data that's out there, what's been kind of the most popular type of e-commerce business that's being bought and sold, and what it is currently, is it's still Amazon FBA businesses. So fulfilled
Mm.
by Amazon. Basically, you're shipping your inventory, your product to Amazon, you're letting them handle, the fulfillment, shipping it to the customer service, and you got your kind of storefront that's on Amazon. Those are the most commonly bought and sold businesses from the data that I've seen. I know it's very popular. There's still a lot of these drop shipping style stores. And for anyone who's listening that doesn't understand what, drop shipping style stores are, they're basically you selling another person's product for a higher
Mhm.
price, and you collect the profit in between. And it's a great business model in itself, but the downsides of it is it's usually selling products that aren't unique, and everyone else is selling the same kind of
Mhm.
thing, using the same kind of Shopify store, the same layout or whatnot. So
Yeah.
it's a great way for people to get into e-commerce, to learn e-commerce. But in terms of buying and selling businesses, they're a lot less desirable. So
Okay.
um, those are still super common. You still have a lot of people buying and selling blogs, affiliate
Mm.
businesses. display advertising. There's so many out there. So like I said, take a day and just go through the different types of online businesses and familiarize yourself with them. You might really resonate with one or two or not resonate with, a couple, and it'll save you a lot of time.
So I like that you break down, what exactly an SBA and drop shipping, because a lot of people don't know, I mean, they hear these terms,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
takes me to my next questions, right? Let's say I'm a buyer
Hmm.
and I'm excited.
Hmm.
I see, like, I don't know, on website like Flippa, a $1.2 million e-commerce business. And I'm like, okay,
Hmm.
I have 300,000. Oh, how do
Hmm.
you get funding for those, right? Because sometimes you hear SBA funding, but
Yeah.
then it takes a while because, like, it's the SBA. So sometimes time kills deals. What are some other ways beside SBA funding that people can fund those e-commerce stores? Let's say I
Hmm.
want to put 300K down on them.
Hmm. That's a really good question. And this actually leads me to one of the most other common problems that first time buyers face when
Yeah.
they're getting into the market, which is they don't figure out the funding side, how they're going to pay for these businesses until after they've, looked at a bunch of deals and started, submitting offers and all this stuff. And
Mhm.
you know, I'm not going to say my method is the end all be all, but there's a lot of different coaches and gurus out there that want to teach you to find the deal first, and then you can worry
Yeah.
about the funding next. And I've seen many people go take this route and never close their first acquisition, because it's like, why would you go to, Walmart to buy groceries and you wouldn't bring your wallet or your credit card? So
Mm.
the big thing for first time buyers is to pre-qualify yourself and secure the buying power before you go out and buy these businesses. And some of the ways you could do that, you touched on one of the biggest ones, which is, SBA backed loans,
Yeah.
right? And for anyone that's unaware of what these SBA backed loans are, the Small Business Administration, basically, government funded program. They have types of programs where they will guarantee the loans for
Mhm.
acquiring a business. So the banks still front the money, but the government guarantees it. So it creates more safety for the banks, because banks don't
Mhm.
really like to make loans on e-commerce businesses, because e-commerce businesses usually don't have a bunch of physical assets like real
Yeah.
estate. You have
No
the house, you
collateral.
have the yeah. So it makes it more risky. But if the government says, "Hey, I'm gonna, I'll pay you back," they're like, "Okay, no problem, we'll do that." So what you can do as a buyer, first time buyer, you can pre-qualify yourself. If you're looking at e-commerce businesses, you can go to ecommercelending.com.
Okay.
Steven Spear over there runs a great team. You could pre-qualify with them, and you can get an actual document that says you're pre-authorized or pre-approved for up to a certain amount. And
Mm.
that separates you so much from all these other people who haven't figured out the funding. Because,
Yeah.
think about it. If I'm selling a business, someone says, "I want to buy your business," versus another guy says, "I want to buy your business and I'm pre-approved for $2 million,"
Yeah.
who are you going to spend your time on?
The
So,
guy that's
uh,
approved.
absolutely. So ecommercelending.com, multifunding.com, Joe McClear over there, really cool guy. Those are great ways to fund a deal. You could also look at revenue-based or cash flow-based lenders. One, Bupos.com, it's another popular one. You can get pre-approved on there too. So they got their different rates and pros and cons or whatnot. And then, the other option you have, if you want to kind of buy bigger and you don't have the funds in hand, you can always think about trying to integrate some sort of seller financing into the
Got
deal.
it.
And what seller financing is basically saying, "Hey, I'll put down X% and I'll pay you out over a certain time." And there's a lot of different ways to do seller financing or different forms of that kind of
Mhm.
creative financing. But you're putting the key concept is you're going to put X amount down. I'm going to pay you out over time at these terms and interest rate, or whatever you want to do. So that way you don't have to put the full amount down. Now, granted, you're going to limit yourself with your options that you have. So I
Mhm.
encourage you to look at the SBA, Bupos, and have that, solid buying power so you could buy solid brands.
I'm curious. You mentioned Bupos
Hmm.
as revenue. Like, so tell us more about that. So it analyze the revenue and the asset of the business and create the loan around that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So and granted, I'm not a Bupos expert, but
Yeah.
they do look at these deals. They provide an alternative form of financing for acquiring these potential businesses. I know their criteria is can be a little bit more picky. Like for example, you can't buy a drop shipping store with Bupos funding. It has to be a unique brand or a unique online business or whatnot. So you can't buy these, done for you stores with Bupos financing. But their in-house team will take a look at it. Of course, they're going to look at the main factors of the deal. They want to make sure it's
Mhm.
a brand that's going to stick around long enough for it to survive. But what I'd say is, if you're curious about it, take a look at their site.
Yeah.
I know a lot of them are on LinkedIn. Juan Ignacio, I believe, one of
Okay.
the great guys over there at Bupos. You could check him out on LinkedIn. They're great. So
Good.
that's what I
Good.
would do.
I love it. I love it. So you told us a lot about, if I'm looking to buy. Now let's
Hmm.
switch over. If I have an e-commerce business and I want to sell it,
Yeah.
right? What are some of the things that buyers are looking for? I know there's different type of buyer, from the individual to the private equity to the family office and all that. What
Hmm.
is that, what are some of the most popular buyers you've seen in that
Hmm.
space? So tell us more about that. If I'm selling an e-com business, how should I prepare my business for sale? Let's start there, right? And I'm doing, let's say, 100 or $200,000 in revenue right now with it.
Okay. Really good question, because this is the number one question when you're looking at your e-commerce business. And a lot of people, they own an e-commerce business. They're not even thinking about, well, could I even sell it? A lot of
Mm,
people don't even know that they can sell an e-commerce business or what kind of money they can make from it. And
mm-hmm.
in essence, there's a lot to it, but in essence, you sell an e-commerce business, it's going to go off a multiple of what your past profits are. So let's say, on that 100 or 200,000 in revenue that you're doing, let's say you're doing 20% of 20% of that.
Yeah.
So, it's making 20 to 40,000 in net profit a year.
Yeah.
And usually you'd see a multiple applied to that, anywhere from 1 to 4 or higher, depending on your business. So, even if it's making 40,000, you sell it off for $120,000. If you
Yeah.
get that in a lump sum, that could be really life changing, right? And
Yeah.
so that's what that's one thing I want to kind of make the viewers aware, is like it's an option for you guys. And it's in terms of what they're looking for. um I've created something that I call my 5 factors of value in what
Okay.
makes a valuable e-commerce brand. And
Tell us.
the 5. So these are in no particular order except for one. Number one is profitability.
Mm,
And there's a lot of things that go with profitability. I have a whole post on my Facebook and LinkedIn if anyone wants to check that out. But profitability, number one, you've got traffic,
mm-hmm.
how you get customers and how they convert, where you're getting them from. You've got documentation, which
Mm,
catches a lot of people off guard. It's like, well, what do you mean documentation? Like actually knowing how much money your business makes, making sure that a
yeah.
proper bookkeeper, accountant is doing your finances, you're actually doing your taxes, stuff like that. Documentation. The next one is uniqueness. So how
Mm-hmm.
unique your brand is. So just going back to that point of like the drop shipping store versus something that's more unique, you look at
Mm-hmm.
some of the more quality brands that are out there, how unique your brand is. So uniqueness is another one.
Okay.
Um, Documentation, profitability. What am I missing? Oh my goodness. I forgot my own 5 factors of value. Traffic, documentation, automation. Oh my goodness. So sorry.
Ooh,
So
that's a big one.
it's a huge one. Automation. And the thing is, like when I say automation, Shopify, for example, e-commerce businesses in general, Shopify,
Yeah.
Amazon FBA, they have great levels of automation, but you got to look at what you do as the owner on a day-to-day basis, what you're
Mm-hmm.
responsible for, and what's going to end up being the responsibility of that new buyer. So, an example, if you're running an e-commerce business, you're doing all the Facebook ads and Google ads. Well, who are you going to sell that business to? Another Facebook or Google ad
Yeah.
expert? You want to automate your business to a level where John Doe can run it, because you
Exactly.
have the systems, the employees, and teams in place to run it for them. So yeah, automation is the last
No,
one there.
this is massive, right? Profitability, automation, documentation,
Automation,
um,
traffic, uniqueness. Yep.
traffic. Wow, this is huge, because when you're looking at e-com space, we all see, okay, this thing is like printing money, right? It's running. You could be out with your dog and you're making sales, but you don't
Mm-hmm.
think about the back end stuff, where
Yes.
how is it structured and is it even sellable? So I'm glad you
Yeah.
mentioned. What have you seen that has been the type of buyers for e-commerce business? Are we talking mostly like the individual buyer, or is it more like a private equity buyer? Or when would a private equity come in to buy e-com business? Or I'm really curious about that, the buyer side.
That's a really good question. And what I'll say is there's a buyer for all sorts of different types of businesses. Just like there's a lot of different buyers for different types of cars, there's different
Yeah.
buyers for types of e-commerce businesses. So what you're going to typically see, if you got a business that's worth, $100,000, $200,000, you're going to see a mixture of everyday people, office workers, professionals trying to get out of that 9 to 5 and buy into a passive income lifestyle. You're going to see,
Yeah.
average people. You're going to see some people who may have already bought a smaller business or have an established business already, and they're looking to add on or expand. You're going to see professionals where they have a certain skill set trying to acquire certain online businesses. So for example, if you're a marketer, you're good with Facebook ads, and you find a
Yeah.
Shopify store where most of the sales are done through Facebook ads, then, that's going to make sense. So you'll find different professionals on there, whatnot. You have different classes of buyers, and what I'd say, because I work with a lot of private equity guys, VC guys, aggregators and whatnot. And what I can say is the general threshold that you might keep on your radar in terms of if you want to be able to kind of catch their interest or be in their range. A lot of these bigger buyers are kind of creating their criteria starting at 1 million plus in profits. So whether that's EBITDA, SDE, or
Yeah.
net profits, that kind of puts you on their radar. They look for brands like that, and they'll fight over them. There's a shortage of those. There will always be a shortage of
Really?
those, and they go for much higher multiples. And
What are we talking in terms of multiple? Like 5, 10x?
yeah, and that's the thing, because it gets a little distorted. Like when you start throwing out like, well, they're selling for 6x or for 8x or whatnot, but the structure can be wildly different from what we think. It's not always like a private equity guy is gonna wire over 8x to your account in a lump sum or something like that. It's not peaches and rainbows, but when you get to those different tiers or different realms, seeing you break out to a 6x to an 8x. I've even seen, brands go over 10x multiples of profit, so, it's out there. There's a market for it. And there's businesses being bought and sold every day for crazy multiples. It's just, it's a matter of what tier are you in, what realm are you in, and making sure that, you're following those 5 different factors of value that I talked about, so.
This is gold, man. I'm really curious, and this is more of a selfish questions. Like,
Mhm,
as you, as because you've been on the buy side and the sell side, what
mhm.
has been like some of the biggest acquisition in terms of numbers have you seen? 10 million, 50 million, 100 million in the e-com space?
Yeah, well, so I was just looking at the news the other night, and so I noticed that Amazon picked up a brand, and Walmart picked up a brand. A lot of these big names that we've heard of, they're doing acquisitions all the time. We just don't see it on the news, and those are going for billions of dollars, right? But for me personally, what I'm seeing on the regular marketplace, I've seen deals anywhere from, small 5 figures, 6 figures, 7 figures. I've seen brands sell of my clients and personal friends. I've seen them exit for above 10 million before, 12 million.
Nice.
So they have them in all sizes. It's out there.
Amazing. So you mentioned your clients. Tell people exactly what you do. I don't think
Yeah,
we covered that.
yeah, absolutely. So, I'm the owner of eCom Exchange, and we help people. We help on both the buy and the sell side. We've acquired stores, so we got 4 brands under management ourselves. We help other people acquire brands. Is exit planning on the sell side. We have exit planning services where people can check in with me once a month, and I can tell them exactly what their business is going for and what we need to work on to make it more sellable, yada yada. So we do everything kind of on the buy and the sell side in terms of e-commerce businesses. So whatever questions or curiosities you might have, just shoot me an email, Branden at ecom-exchange ecom-exchange.com, or just find me on Facebook or LinkedIn, Branden Yamada. So usually we can work with you. We got a good team, and we're all about quality.
I love it. I love it. So, we'd like to finish up and wrap things up with a small biz tips, right? Because we have a
Mhm.
lot of entrepreneurs that listen. Some of them has service-based business, some of them has product-based business. What
Mhm.
is in your, experience, that one small tip you would share with any entrepreneurs if they're
Mhm.
looking to buy businesses or they're looking to grow theirs and sell it?
Mhm. That's a good question. So let me start with the buy side. I'll give tips for both the buy side and the sell
Yeah.
side. If you're on the buy side, I know I kind of mentioned this already, but there's three big things that I feel like you should do. And this isn't, financial advice, but one, spend the time to get to know yourself, your history of success. So even if you're like a 9 to 5 worker, if you have
Mhm.
experience building teams or something like that, take note of what your skills and experience and what your past successes entail, and then write down some of the things that you may not have liked about your previous jobs or your current business or anything like that. Take an inventory of all that, your skills, your resources. So
Mhm.
if you got a brother who has an ads agency, or they have something that could be relevant to a business, write all that down. Make yourself familiar with the different types of e-commerce businesses out there, and then go after the deals and
Mhm.
start looking at deals. So one, familiarize yourself. Two, get pre-qualified in terms of your buying power. So if you're
Yeah.
stateside, the SBA BUPOS, just like we talked about, that puts some real power into your pocket, because most people don't do that, and that can save you a lot of time and put you in range of big businesses that could have big changes for your life. So
Mhm.
pre-qualify, and then three, be relentless. If you find a
Mhm.
business that you like, it's probably going to be a competition if they're not off market, if you're dealing with a broker or
Yeah.
marketplace. If you're interested in it, you need to let the broker know that you're interested. After you established buying power, fight for it, because it's not always a question of who's the most qualified buyer, but it's also a question of like, well, who does the broker think is the most qualified? Who does the seller like the most, right?
Mm.
So be relentless in your approach when you find a business that you really like. So those are my three big tips for the buy side. On the
Yes.
sell side, if you're looking at potentially making an exit, or even if you're not looking at making an exit, making sure you have an exitable business is a great way to make sure you have a valuable business, because you always
Mm.
want your exit options. So I would say take a look at those 5 factors we talked about, making sure your brand is profitable. You have
Mhm.
good quality traffic that's not always that's coming through organic channels, through Google and social media channels, making sure you're properly documented. If you're doing your
Mhm.
own financials, the chance of you being able to sell your business is slim to none. So get
Yes.
yourself a proper accountant or bookkeeper, get your numbers, do your taxes. Uniqueness, making sure that you have a unique brand that's not just drop shipping what everyone else is doing. So,
Mhm.
one good question you could ask yourself is it just a name, or how is our branding really different from everyone else? So whether it's on the box, you have unique products or whatnot that other people can't sell, making sure you have something unique. And then automation, not just thinking of all the different types of automation you have, but really
Yes.
taking a look at what you do in the business and what the potential buyer would have to do if they bought the business, and really think of what kind of risks come with that, and make it as hands off as possible. That's going to put you in a much better realm when you go to make an exit on a business.
Wow, guys, this was Branden Yamada. Did I say it right?
Yep, that's right.
Please reach out to him. As you can see, he is an expert when it comes to buying and selling e-com brands. Thank you again for jumping on, Brandon. This was amazing.
Gilbert, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you guys for tuning in.